the first part of my talk tonight has been obviously about the health part. And I think you guys are probably a little bit different to most in that you are very, very well aware that so many of the things that we are being told about in this world of ours today are actually not true, that we are being misled. Well, the reasons why you wouldn't have heard this before, or why people haven't understood this before, is because we've been misled about the nature of the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, the news at the moment, you know, here in Britain, is all about whether Pfizer will buy AstraZeneca, you know, and what will be the effect upon our economy and everything. Well, actually, the effect upon the economy is everything that this is about. Because, you see, diseases are exploited by drug companies as markets. You know, when you get sick, you are a more valuable commodity to a drug company than you are when you're healthy. Drug companies are not really interested in you being healthy. There's no money, get this, there's no money in curing diseases. The real money in the drug industry is in giving people a pill they have to take day after day, week after week for the rest of their lives. That's how the drug industry makes money. There's no money in cures. And you think about the trillions of dollars that have been spent on research, you know, none of them are seeking a cure. They're seeking ways to control diseases, to keep customers. The human body is like a marketplace. The drug industry defines the human body as a marketplace and a potential source of profits. And what it wants is a monopoly on the practice of medicine. Natural approaches that cannot be patented, are no use to it. If you invent a synthetic chemical, a molecule that doesn't exist in nature, and you produce it as a drug, and especially if you're the first company to produce a drug for a specific disease, you essentially, for the period of time that that patent is in effect, you own that disease. You control that market. Albert Szent-Györgyi discovered vitamin C, but he couldn't patent it. He couldn't say he invented it. He just discovered it. Vitamin C exists in nature. Nobody invented it. It exists in nature. So the drug industry, in order to survive, has to eliminate any and all competition from natural, non-patentable therapies. And I know you've had people coming to you here talking about codex. Well, that's the reason why. It's the patent issue. The patency issue is the thing that's holding the pharma industry together. If ever anything happened to change that, if ever non-patentable molecules like vitamins were allowed to compete on an equal footing, the drug industry would be halfway towards being finished, especially if the information about natural alternative approaches was sufficiently widely available. It's not even, right? It's not even as if our government, the British government, doesn't know about the nature of the drug industry. It does. And in fact, about 10 years ago, the House of Commons Health Committee produced this report. And look at the title, The Influence of the Pharmaceutical Industry. This is a 126-page report. On the day that it was produced, it was news. It was covered. The day after, it was gone. It was buried. No more was heard about it. But when you read it, it makes fascinating reading. It confirms much of what I've been saying. It describes the influence of the drug industry as pervasive and persistent. It talks about drug safety concerns. It acknowledges that drug-induced illness is an increasing problem. That's diseases, health problems caused by drugs, needing more drugs to treat them, and so on. And it actually states there's not enough independent research being conducted to compare drug approaches with non-drug approaches. And in fact, some of the witnesses who took part in the inquiry stated openly that there's little commercial interest in non-drug approaches. The government understands the way the drug industry works. There'll be copies of this, if there's any MPs watching this film on YouTube, there'll be copies of this report in the House of Commons library, okay? Why has nothing been done about this? You know, a lot of time and money has been spent producing a report, but there's been, that I can see, there's next to little or no action been taken about it. And, you know, the power of the drug industry I mean, the drug industry is a $1 trillion a year industry. Its total global sales in drugs amount to $1 trillion a year. By 2017, total drug sales are expected to be worth $1.2 trillion. That's $1,200 billion. Okay? I mean, compare that, to put that in perspective, the GDP of Great Britain is, £1.5 trillion, this is dollars. But it's a huge... If the drug industry was a country, this will put it in perspective, if the drug industry was a country and the figure of $1 trillion was its GDP, it would be about the 15th or 16th richest country in the world. So this is what it's about. But this also raises another question, doesn't it? Because if the drug industry is a $1 trillion a year industry, why does it need our money? Why do we have to give generously to medical charities collecting money for drug research? I mean, it's insane, isn't it? It's absolutely insane. And yet, good-hearted, honest people who give to such charities and work for such charities believe that they're doing the right thing. I'm not criticising them because they've been misled, the same as the rest of us have as well. There are signs that this analysis, this understanding of the drug industry is beginning to become the majority view. There was a survey released in February last year, and it found that most people feel the drug industry sees cancer as a money-making opportunity rather than as a disease to eradicate. And the best part about this study was sponsored by Lilly Oncology. Lilly Oncology is a division of the drug company Eli Lilly. And it polled more than 4,000 people in 6 countries. And 60% of the respondents said that they believe drug companies are more interested in treating cancer than curing it. So, I mean, 10, 15 years ago, when Dr. Arth and our foundation first started saying these sorts of things, it was pretty shocking. Audiences back then were, you guys are sitting there and you get this straight away. It's a sign of how far we've come, really, that all of us understand the dangers to society when we allow multinational corporations to gain such a control over us and our governments. And this is a problem. I mean, globally, if you look at the economic impact of all this, I mean, it's absolutely, totally crazy. The World Economic Forum knows about this because they did a study a few years ago looking at the total global economic impact of just 5 chronic diseases. They looked at cancer, diabetes, mental illness, heart disease, and respiratory disease. And they found that over the next 20 years, the total global economic impact could reach $47 trillion. The total global economic impact of just 5 chronic diseases. I mean, let's face it, there's dozens of them. We can't afford this. I mean, this is insane that we are trying to encourage developing world countries like, in Africa to follow the insane example, with our extraordinary, expensive healthcare system. It's just insane. The economic cost of cancer alone we know it's about $1 trillion a year. The cost of heart disease economically to the world is not that far behind that. So, in this age, in the UK and Europe today of austerity, this is a very, very, very great and important time to actually take steps towards dismantling this approach. The European Union is, in Europe, at the heart of all of this. The European Union loves the drug industry. The European Union loves all huge multinational corporate cartel-type industries. And in April 2008, it announced a €2 billion scheme to what it said was to boost drug discovery and establish the EU as what it called the pharmacy of the world. I mean, that phrase was actually used at the press conference when they announced this. And ultimately what they want is to enable drug companies, like in America, to advertise directly to us through the media, in newspapers and magazines and television and the whole range of stuff, But at the same time, of course, as I'm sure many of you will be aware, they are trying to ban non-patentable vitamin therapies, or at least reduce them to near meaningless doses where there's no possible chance of a therapeutic effect, you know. So this is the picture, really. I mean, the second part of my talk, I'll be explaining more about the European Union, how it came about, and how it came that, you know, the multinational corporate cartels have such control over it. And in fact, the thing I'll be focusing most on in the second half are the origins of the EU, which Rob gave a little hint about before. And I promise you that I'll be telling you some things that you've never heard before. But for now,